Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kizer & Lundquist Feist XL. You guys are probably familiar with the Kizer Feist, which the original was much smaller. They had liner lock versions, they had titanium frame lock versions, and I took issue with the thing being a little bit small, a little bit narrow, especially with the exposed frame lock version. This particular one is a liner lock version, and this particular model is 20 CV and purple haze fat carbon, which looks really cool. But the size of this and the fact that it is a recessed liner is something that I very much appreciate. Now, this particular guy, I believe this is available right now. This particular guy is a little bit more expensive, but they do have a less expensive version of this knife in 154 cm, which is really the one that I think most people are going to enjoy. We'll talk more about that. I will link this right down below so you guys can check it out if you want. It does help my channel when you use my links, but that is entirely up to you. Thanks so much to Kizer for providing this knife for review. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. All right, let's go ahead and real quickly, if I can find my tape measure. There we go. Let's get a measurement of this knife. Overall length of the Kizer Feist XL is coming in at, it's not a huge knife. It's not an XL knife. It's really only about it's not quite 7 3/4 inches overall. It's about 7.65 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3 1/4. Cutting edge is coming in at about 3 1/8. Just a couple of size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. So, it's closer to the size of the Rat 2, but still feels like a much larger knife, especially in contrast with the original Feist. Why don't you have the original Feist to do a size comparison? I don't know. I don't own every knife. It's really hard to do, believe it or not, to own every single knife. So I just don't have it. Up against the d.o.c.k 8020.5. There you go. And then let's do, how about the Bug Out? That's a great size comparison. And then up against the Spyderco Para 3s. You can see here it's very close to the size of the Bug Out, but definitely feels more solid and robust. How's the action? Well, the action's actually great. This is a front flipper only knife, which generally I'm not a huge fan of because it doesn't feel like a very organic means of opening a knife unless you spend all day and all night playing with knives like me. Or maybe you do, I don't know. I always test, if the D10 is tuned correctly, I'll be able to do this with multiple different fingers, especially like the side of my index finger. This is ridiculously easy to manipulate, even as a front flipper. So as far as front flipper only knives go, this is one of the better ones. It's also made easier by the fact that the frame is a little wider, there's a little bit more to hold on to so you don't accidentally throw it across the room, right? And you're also not putting pressure on an exposed frame lock. So yeah, this is it's pretty easy to manipulate, and it's got typical Kizer action, which is very good for this price range. A little bit of encouragement. It's gonna fall right down into the closed position with no double clutch or anything like that. Let's do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's about the same, but these scales are slightly contoured. Carry profile length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3 is just a really long pill body. It's gonna be an easy thing to carry, right? It's maybe about the same, maybe a hair longer than the Para 3. It's definitely shorter than the PM2 and nowhere near as tall as either of them. Materials, like I said, this is purple haze fat carbon, which I think looks awesome as far as carbon fiber goes. And then for the blade material on this guy, we're looking at CPM 20 CV. I do not know how this has been heat treated. I have no idea. I don't have Rockwell testing equipment. I'm going to assume that Kizer has been doing what they usually do, which is to get the heat treat pretty good. I can't say I hear a lot of reports about Kizer not getting their heat treat at least fairly appropriate. Production M390, in my opinion, or 20 CV. I say M390 and 20 CV, it's the same thing. When we're looking at production knives like this, I expect it to be anywhere from 60 to 62. That's an appropriate range. What I don't like to see is when they hit it at 59 to 61, but honestly, that wouldn't surprise me given that this has the coated, tumbled finish, which will bring that range down a little bit lower. So it might be. It's very possible. And sometimes, if we're talking about some other companies, sometimes they're, when they do a DLC or a coating or something, their range is only 58 to 60, which I think is not good at all. But I don't know. My guess is it's somewhere between 59 and 61, right? Anyways, let's go ahead and do the hardboard. Oh yeah, no, we were gonna weigh it because we just did the materials. So the weight on this knife is coming in, and this is probably going to be about the same for all of them, 3.25 ounces, which is great. It's perfect because it's got 3.25 inches of blade. Balance on this knife is going to sit right, honestly, right in the middle of where your index finger is going to go, right here, right? So it feels very balanced. It feels lighter even. So that's great. No issues there. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. My guess is that pivot is a T10, and my guess was wrong. It is a T8, and it looks like maybe then the I was hoping for T10 and T8, but it looks like it's going to be T8 and T6. So we have a T8 pivot, and then we have T6 hardware. Only one screw on each side, which is really great, honestly. Minimal hardware, shouldn't be that difficult to take apart. Should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness on this guy. Come on, zero out. There we go. Feist coming in at 100, and it's going to be about 115. It says 116, probably about 115 thousandths, which is pretty thin, pretty good. For this size and style of knife, I think that's great. All right, let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes. It is the Kizer Feist, but it is bigger, which in my opinion only makes this better. I think this is 100% a better, I mean, if you're limited by laws, it's the only time, or if you're just like, I just don't want a larger blade, that's understandable, right? It's a fair thing. But I think taking the Feist design and making it larger is an absolute win for most people in every way. You have more handle to hang on to. It just feels more natural. This is also wider, right? So it just feels less like an object that you might accidentally hurl into the horizon while you're using it, or crush into a powder, right? Or accidentally cut yourself. I cut myself more with tiny knives on accident than I do with big knives. Not to say that the original Feist is a tiny knife, but it's small enough that I'm like, whoops, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Little knives, for whatever reason, right? They just seem a little bit more dangerous. More to hang on to. If you're having trouble front flipping your knife, this is what I do. Cat's paw it like this. Side, not the top, not down here. The side of the tip of your thumb, and then you just sort of push into the knife, build up some energy, and then sort of quickly peel it over, right? The more you do it, the easier it's going to be. Really nice. Nice access to that liner lock too, by the way. A couple of jimps up there, but a nice cutout here on the show side scale, making it very easy to disengage the lock and let that blade fall down to your fingernail and then close it. Just exactly how it should be. I like the blade. I like how the tip is angled down just a little bit, right? So you can get your finger up here, still do draw cuts with it. We have a little flat that carries out maybe 70% the length of the blade, and then it's pure taper down to a relatively thin final cutting bevel. Get a little piece of paper and demonstrate for you guys. This doesn't prove much. It's just a piece of paper, right? But the factory cutting edge on this thing is great. There's no, lipping or like rolling on the edges of the paper, which means that's my indication that it's a clean slice, right? It's not, a lot of times when you're looking at a thicker edge, you'll see the edges of the paper do this, like it's tearing it versus slicing it, right? So obviously your experience is going to be different depending on what it is that you're cutting, but you can see that a little curly cue. It's really wanting to bite into the paper and should be just fine for most generic EDC style tasks, mainly cutting open packages that contain additional knives, which is, come on, that's what we're cutting open, right? So yeah. I can't say that I love the black wash finish versus Kizer's beautiful tumbled finish, but, it does look good with the purple fat carbon. If you can find or get a version of this knife that is tumbled, I think it would look a little bit better, but, if you're specifically going for this fat carbon version, then I suppose the black wash looks fine. It's quite a bit of a Kizer-y billboardy logo here that really shows through, not in the best way in contrast with the black, on the blade, but what are you going to do? And then we have Justin Lundquist's logo here, Feist XL. I don't know why they insist on putting the name of the knife on the blade. We know what it is, right? And then it says 06220 CV. Honestly, less than what Kizer normally does, so I suppose it's a step in the right direction. It's still a lot. Then again, it's not really hurting the knife, so whatever. Final cutting bevel is nice and even. It's definitely sharpened well. It comes to a nice tip. You even have a contoured or radiused spine. they only do the jimping for a certain length. I mean, this is obviously so you can get at it for the front flip, but why didn't they extend it, right? This is a knife where I'd kind of want to, I'm not saying I don't feel secure up here with my thumb on the spine, but I really wish they would have extended it a bit further. Not really that big of a deal. If you like to strike flint off of the spine of a pocket knife, it's not going to be easy to do. It might be impossible to do on this guy because you have a radius spine. So for those people, you're not going to get that. For those of you who like the radius spine and it feels more luxury or whatever, then yeah, you're going to enjoy that, right? Fit and finish on this knife all the way around is very good, and this is really nice. Zoom in here. This fat carbon is just beautiful. I like that the areas, different areas are more flat or more reflective. I'm sorry, more matte or more reflective than other areas. It just really gives this nice, really satisfying appearance to the scales, right? And if you don't like purple or you don't like the crazy wild carbon fibers, right, then you may not like this. But this just really, especially here, you can see this just really looks nice. I like it, right? I don't know what else to say about that. It's really going to come down to preference. But as far as carbon fiber goes, this is really nice stuff. We have one standoff, which is fine. It doesn't need anything more than that. It doesn't feel like I'm going to crush the knife or anything like that. It's plenty strong. And we have liners that are, recessed into the scales and then milled out, but they are full steel liners, so it's definitely reinforced. Pocket clip is all right. It's one of those that I don't know why, but it actually goes up first, then swoops, and then comes forward. It's fine. It goes in and out of the pocket. The bill's going to be a little bit grabby, which kind of drives me crazy. This clip is steel, so if it does grab something on your way by and it bends out, not as forgiving as titanium. Excuse me. They did recess the part of the clip that attaches. They did recess that into the carbon fiber, but they did not mill a spot on the other side for lefties. Sorry, lefties. They just didn't do that. There's no lanyard hole. Does anybody care anymore? I mean, I know it's a joke, but like, it clearly doesn't matter, right? I mean, the companies are doing this more and more and more. And I don't think it's just because of me. I think it's because the lanyard and lanyard bead phase is kind of coming to an end. Or who knows, maybe it'll come back, right? In and out of the pocket though, truthfully, it's fine. Carry depth, it is definitely deep carry. Really all you're gonna see is that pocket clip. Carbon fiber, this is very smooth. You can't feel, if you're wondering, can you feel the transition between those different areas of the carbon fiber? No, you cannot. It's perfectly smooth. The micarta versions might be a little bit rougher in between the surface of the micarta and the clip coming in and out of the pocket, but probably nothing that's going to be a problem for most people. We have a stop pin that is located internally and actually attached to the blade. If you can see that pin rotating around with it, it's running on channels that are carved into both of the steel liners on either side. It's a nice way to do that. I like that a lot. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No lock stick. No double clutch. No pivot lash. Smooth and consistent action, and a nice clicky detent with perfect centering. Is it perfect or has it come slightly off since it may have come a hair off since I have flipped it over and over and over again, but it's likely just a quick turn of the pivot that will bring that right back to center. I always say this, it's better that it comes slightly off center after using it, because then it means you don't have to fight the Loctite when you inevitably go back to readjust and re-Loctite it anyway, right? So you can get it the way that you want. Most of the time, Kizers come perfectly centered from the factory, and if they come off after 100 flips or so, you just tighten the pivot, you should be okay. This is a great knife. I don't know that I 100% agree with the price of this one. They want, by the way, the liner, not titanium. That liner lock is steel. Kizer knives are made in China. Everybody knows that. The basic version of this knife, which is in 154 cm, comes in at $87, and I think is a fantastic deal. That is the one that I recommend to essentially everybody, especially people looking for their first front flipper. This is a great choice. In fact, I think they should just get rid of the tiny, not really. I mean, some people are going to like a smaller knife. I just think that the Kizer Feist XL is just a universally better knife, in my opinion. Unless you're limited by laws or your preferences lie specifically with smaller knives, right? This guy's $180, which is, yee, Kizer. You've got knives in your line that are sporting similar materials and identical build quality that are $20 to $30 less, right? Not all the time, but, Then again, we got other companies utilizing the same materials and charging $50 more. So maybe they're more or less on point. If you love the purple haze or whatever other materials the 20CV versions of this knife come with, and you're just like, I got $180, I just really got to burn, then okay. But the standard version of this knife in $87, 154cm is a beautifully balanced steel. It's one of my favorite steels of all time and is an excellent user steel and is well accentuated with this blade geometry. Go for that one. This is cool, right? If you like the super fancy stuff, but for most people, the standard one will be just fine. That version of the knife is recommendable. Let me make that clear. So this review is going to go under my most recommended knives, but specifically what I'm talking about is the standard one, which is the exact same thing with some slightly different materials, right? And while 20CV will definitely hold an edge better than 154cm, we have to remember that's not the only, it's not the only element that matters, right? 154cm still has decent edge retention, but it's got also great corrosion resistance, much better toughness than 20CV, and is way easier to sharpen and touch up. It's not going to be nearly as chippy, right? If you're going to actually go out and use this, I would prefer 154cm over 20CV. But if you're just out there to get the version of this with the best hypothetical edge retention possible, and you love the idea of combining that with corrosion resistance, because 20CV is going to have better corrosion resistance, then sure, spend an extra $95 on this guy or whatever it is. It's not bad, right? The 180 is not bad, but the standard $87 is just better. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Thanks so much to Kizer for sending this in. Like I said, it should be available. I'll link it down below. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.